Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Make Life Less Taxing podcast, the show where we uncover what really creates freedom in life and business, and we'll explore stories of those who've learned how to build wealth with purpose.
Welcome back to the Make Life Less Taxing podcast. Today, I'm joined by Tony Manganiello, founder of the Payroll Solutions and co-creator of the cash flow analysis. Tony's works help organizations uncover the hidden financial stresses quietly undermining performance, retention, and ROI. Tony, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Daniel. I appreciate you having me here today.
It's great to have you on. Hey, Tony, share a little bit more about who you are and what is the work specifically that you do.
Well, when I was young, my family broke up and this is going back into the 70s, and that wasn't very common back then. And as I started getting older, I began to realize one of the biggest reasons, if not the biggest reason, was money trouble. And so throughout my entire life, I've been trying to solve that problem. And it's been quite a journey. And I've been working with individuals and also with organizations when it comes to how money problems at the individual level can impact not just families, but organizations and the initiatives that they're trying to put in place to improve performance and leadership development and things like that.
Oh, that sounds exactly. Was there a moment when you just was it primarily because of your parents kind of splitting up that it was like, hey, this is the purpose for my life? Or was there, what was kind of a bit more into the journey?
I used to think it was because you needed to make more money. And it's when I began to realize that making more actually can sometimes lead to bigger problems. I tell people your income is a shovel. You can either dig a hole or fill a hole. And most people are out there digging holes. And when it comes to organizations, they're not realizing that their payroll is just one big shovel that many little shovels are digging with. And changing that helps the upstream organization out tremendously.
Yeah, no, you have a great point. And I think when I was an advisor, I call myself now a recovering CFP. When I was in the business, it was one year, and it was after the 2008, 2009 financial crisis. I was going to organizations and try to educate them on the fact that if your employees are thinking about or worrying about their money, you're losing money from the bottom line and you don't even know it. Like it's just leaking right out because the productivity is down, they're stressed, they're not really focusing on what they need to be focusing on. And I know there was an organization, they actually kind of went and put a figure on it, which was, very interesting. Unfortunately, when I started to go and do this, nobody wanted to talk to me because they were like, I don't even know if I'm going to have a job tomorrow because everything that was going on. So it was just poor timing. But I learned that, especially for organizations, there is a big mismanagement that, the owners of the company or executives don't really understand, right? What it really means to kind of live paycheck to paycheck. And unfortunately, a lot of employees, that's kind of where they are. And that affects the bottom line for the business.
Absolutely. I call it the payroll blind spot. They think that that there's a transaction. I'm paying you, come do the work. And what I've discovered over the last 30 years working with individuals, with my partnerships with my father-in-law, John Commuta, and Nightingale Conant, I've been featured on the 700 Club, a number of different places. We've reached over 3 million people. And over the last decade or so, I've done over 1,000 one-on-one consultations. And I look at these organizations and these statistics, you're talking about I think it's 1.5 hours per week. 65% of employees are thinking about personal money problems. And you add it up, it's thousands of dollars per employee per year. So however many employees you have, that's how much is being wasted. And it's not because people are purposely making these mistakes. I sat back and I just connected the dots like chocolate and peanut butter. Hey, wait a minute. This is what people are missing at the organizational level, is that there's a blind spot in the sense that people put money into payroll expecting people to just perform. And they don't realize that the post-payday environment is something I call a 50-50 drain. And that 50-50 drain makes a tremendous impact in a negative way on the individual's lives and the upstream organization who thinks payroll is going to solve all all the problems. And if they think there's not the performance that they'd like, let's do a couple initiatives, bring in a couple guys to get people all hyped up and excited, like Tony Robbins, for about 2 or 3 weeks, and then the sustainability of those types of initiatives, they all just, taper off. And I have a very close friend of mine who's constantly telling me people are trying to figure out, why can't this stuff stick? And I'm like, well, it's because they're not addressing the blind spot. And that's basically the approach.
Yeah. Oh, it's great. And put it that way, the name of the podcast, Make Life Less Taxing. It's not just about money. It's not about taxes as far as that. There is a component of that, but it's, they're being taxed in so many other areas. And we kind of have a movement where we call it keep what is yours and break free. And break free from the traditional systems, right? The financial system, educational system, because just as you're mentioning, I remember having a client where she was managing a $3 million account at work, but we started talking about personal finances. She had no clue how to reconcile her own, and I'm like, there is a problem here. Like I'm thinking, you're working and you're dealing with this, and you can't even do your own personal finance. Like there is a correlation. Like it's not like, oh, she's perfect at work, just can't do it at home. There are some things. So that is kind of the movement I am. If you had to describe kind of the movement, because I feel like this is a little bit more of mission and a vision and purpose that you have, in one or two sentences, what is really the mission that that you're on?
Personally, I summed it up, and I just simply want to help 1 million families learn how to transform payments into prosperity, and help the organizations that are employing them get what they deserve out of the payroll investment that they're making every month, year, into their employees. There's things that are draining that, and I just want to just simply show them where the drain is, so they can and how to plug it, so that the intentions that they have with the income that they're producing can actually be achieved.
Yeah. You kind of mentioned this, and I've got a little bit different saying for it. It's never a problem of how much money's coming in. It's always a problem of how much money going out. And I think what you just mentioned, if you have a bucket and it's got a hole in it, it doesn't matter how much water you're going to pour in. It will always keep on coming out. And the more you pour in, sometimes the faster is going to start running out. And I think that's where most people focus on. I just got to go make more money, where really they kind of have acres of diamonds in their backyard going like, well, hang on, if you plug up the hole, that's the simpler thing, because that's actually something we can control right now. I'm not saying you can't control how much more money you're going to make, but for a lot of people, they can't just go and suddenly say, oh, I'm going to go and make the double, right? I mean, if they're working, if they're a W-2 employee, that's going to be very hard to do. If you're a business owner, it might be a little bit different. But even with that, and maybe this is going to make sense, I primarily, as a recovering CFP and financial advisor, I call every financial advisor an accidental business owner. Right? Because they've fallen in love with the finance business, but they don't understand, in order to make that business run, you actually have to act like a business owner. And one of the reasons why I got out of the industry, because I literally woke up one day in 2014 and realized that I thought I was building a business. And then I learned the definition of a business: an entity that can run without the owner. And I'm like, well, I guess I don't have a business. Because if I didn't show up for work, there is nothing would be happening. And I think this is what happens to a lot of business owners. Unfortunately, they don't realize that there is kind of these two sides to it. But when it comes to finance, it's never a problem of how much money's coming in. I mean, we all could always have more money coming in, but I think the easier or simpler way of changing what's happening with somebody is just assess what money's going out and where it's going out.
Yeah. It's what I try to have people wrap their brains around is it's not about generating wealth, because everybody in this country is already doing that. The average individual is going to make between $2 and $3 million during their working lifetime. So wealth generation's already been taken care of. The challenge is teaching people to learn how to accumulate some of the wealth they're already generating. And that's where we learn plugging the holes of this everything. You mentioned the acres of diamonds. And the thing we've been focused on for over 30 years, more than anything else, is becoming debt free, because a lot of people don't realize that debt eats up a tremendous amount of their wealth wealth generation, because people are generating wealth. It's just not accumulating for them. It's accumulating elsewhere. And the banking industry in this country has over $24 trillion with a T, $24 trillion in assets. And when you understand banking and fractional banking, which I'm sure you do, none of that money none of the wealth that they've accumulated was used by their own money. It was all of us putting money into checking account using banks, and banks just, accumulate all the wealth that we're generating. And it's just important, I believe, to show people how to kind of flip that script a little bit so they can begin to accumulate the wealth they're already generating, so that when they do that, if they go out and make more money, they're not digging deeper holes. They're just building a bit of a mountain of cash.
Yeah. Now you've said before that debt isn't necessarily the enemy. It's just a bit misunderstood. What did you mean by that?
Well, most people think that the interest that they pay is based on the interest rates they're charged.
Hmm.
And what they don't understand is that the interest rates you're charged, what they do is determine your payment, not how much interest you pay. Like a 6% mortgage. The only time you pay 6% on a mortgage is when you pay it off in the first year. Well, who the heck is going to do that?
Yeah.
And without getting into all the crazy details, going beyond spreadsheets, I'm sure you were at this one point or another, you think like a spreadsheet, What most people don't realize, and one of the things I've been helping people for decades see, is that the 50-50 drain essentially means this: you're working about half of the year just so that you can bring home enough so you can make debt payments. And of those debt payments that you make every month, up to 50% or more of those payments are lost to interest. So the 6% mortgage, the 4% mortgage, the 8% or 2% car payment, the 15, 18% credit card, none of that determines how much you pay. It determines what your payment will be. How much you pay is a completely different story. So when you at the individual level are working half the year so you can bring home enough that you can make payments that are costing you 50%, what does that mean? You got 25% of your gross income that you have to work with. When an employer looks at their workforce, the payroll blind spot is that the people they employ, all of them, the vast majority of them are falling into that category. So why is it that people continue to bring this type of stress to work, even after they have a raise? Well, what happens when people get a raise? Get a new car, buy a bigger house. Budgeting is one of the biggest problems we have, because budgeting is all about spending management. And no business, and as a business owner, I'm sure you've seen this, you don't do spending management as a business. You do cash flow management, which, it starts with spending management to figure out where it's all going, how it's been allocated. But you're very sensitive to what that return on whatever line item in the expense category is. Payroll is one of the biggest line items in every organization. And all of it's going into the 50-50 drain. We've, like I said, reached over 3 million people, and it blows my mind how many people don't understand how interest rates work and what debt to income ratio really means. And so we get in there with some real simplified concepts, and we teach the workforce what that means. And there's three things everybody always says. How come I never heard about this before? Why don't they teach this in school? And I wish I knew about this years ago. And so that when it comes to workforce adoption, when you give people that kind of a paradigm shift and give them tools and things like that, like we've been giving millions of people all this time, ways to just unplug from what I call the payment matrix. It's like, that's what these people are. The payment matrix is
100%.
It's a 50-50 drain. And, that 92% of the people in this country are going to be working until they die. And it's not because of lack of generating wealth. It's because of lack of knowing how to accumulate the wealth they're already generating. And that's basically all we're here to do, is change that and help organizations understand that when you can resolve the payroll blind spot, what does that mean for the organization when your staff and your culture is not bringing that weight, or when they bring that weight, they have more clarity about it? Because it's not about generating results overnight. We all know that it's not going to happen. What it is getting rid of the uncertainty, providing clarity so that they understand, oh, this makes sense. Now I know what I have to look forward to. And I understand that what I can do right now will have a positive impact for my future. And that just is a synergistic type of environment that helps everybody out.
Yeah. You mentioned kind of the whole idea of unplugging from the matrix, and I kind of mentioned that's what kind of the whole movement is like, break free from the traditional way of doing things. So was there a
Yes.
moment when you kind of realized that most financial solutions were actually more of a band-aid solution, for
Yeah.
something deeper, and that's how most people kind of deal with stuff?
Yeah, I'm a numbers geek, and I love to play with numbers. It was when I started, oh, I can't remember when how many, maybe it's close to 20 years ago, when we were producing a monthly newsletter and I was writing articles for it. And I ran just basically plugged some numbers into, figuring out what does this mean. And I realized that people are paying up to 50% or more every month in interest, meaning if you have a family, I have a sample family in my book, and they're making $3,133 a month in payments for their mortgage, 2 cars, and some credit cards. Breaking down the math, 56% of their $3,133 every month is interest.
Hmm.
So, when these mortgages make Barry Madoff look like a saint. Yeah, a $300,000 mortgage, after you pay 7 years, most people move every 7 years, whether they're moving
Yeah.
or they're refinancing, whatever. So they're always in that first decade of their mortgage. Well, in 7 years, a $300,000 mortgage at just over 6%, you pay something like $130,000 in payments, and you reduce the principal on the loan by like 29,000. So if I tell you, give me $130,000 and in 7 years I'll return to you $30,000, you would spit in my face.
Yeah.
You'd laugh in my face. But
Yeah.
mortgages, that's what everybody, and that's good debt. That's what we're told is good
Yeah.
debt. And that's, when I began to realize this, I began to see things differently. And then about 2, 3 years ago, it came to me. I've been a big fan of the movie The Matrix. I'm like,
Yeah.
everybody's in a payment matrix,
Yeah.
and they don't even know it. So I'm like, all right, I'm not a tall, distinguished looking guy like Morpheus in the movie, just some short Italian from the south side of Chicago throwing red pills at everybody I can. And now I'm realizing that organizations need to teach their
Yeah.
workforce this stuff, because the reason why the motivation guys that come in and get people all lathered up, that doesn't last, is because the reality they go back to, that post payday environment, has to change if they want anything else to change. And
Yeah.
so hopefully I can help at that level as well.
Yeah. You mentioned something before, and I just remember that you said most people get a raise, and in my mind, I already knew what the answer was. They go get a car. Where it's even worse. Let's just say they get a $500 a month raise. They
Mhm.
go get a $600 a month payment on a car, and it's like, hold on, no. Even if you got it for $500, you need to realize there is taxes on it. Really, if
Yeah,
you wanted to go get a new car, maybe if you spend $200 on it, per month, that
exactly.
would be in line with the raise that you got. But again, people don't think about it because they don't see the taxes that are coming off of that, off of that
Right.
raise, right?
Yeah, they don't see how much. No one ever asks, how much do I have to gross to bring home this
Yeah,
enough for this payment?
yeah,
I'm always talking to my kids, and um, one of my sons was like, "Hey, Dad, I was able to pay off my car," because they know payments, are necessary when you're getting started,
yeah,
but don't live that lifestyle. And I showed him how paying off his car was the equivalent of him getting an $8,500 a year raise in pay,
mm,
because when you consider taxes, income tax, and all the stuff that, to bring home, it was like $8,500 of his gross pay was now freed up. So it's like getting a raise. And the average family, when they get out of debt, it's almost like a 50% raise. And I tell organizations, you want to give your employees a raise, forget about throwing a few bucks at them extra every month. Show them how to dig themselves out of this hole so that they can get a raise on their own. And retention begins to improve just because they aren't chasing bigger paydays, because they don't
yeah,
have to.
yeah. No, you bring a great point from that. And again, I love the way that you're saying it. Like there's a lot of blind spots, right? So you know, what do you think kind of, a lot of leaders really misunderstand about employees, disengagement and the true root cause of that, right? Because you talk a lot about the payday blind spot. Can you break that
Mhm.
down even a little bit further from
Sure.
what you just, what you mentioned?
Well, imagine you're in business, okay? So most people in business understand this. If you have an online effort, you want to get your click-through rate improved, right? Do you do that without checking if the landing page when people click loads? and that the opt-in form on that page works, what they're doing in the payroll blind spot is the equivalent of a marketing team throwing money and resources at a click-through rate campaign without ever knowing that 50% of the time when someone clicks on the link, it never loads the page. And the 50% of the time that the page loads, 50% of those times, the opt-in form doesn't work.
That's a great analogy, by the way. I love that analogy.
They would stop that campaign right now. And I'm here just telling people at the organizational level, that's what your payroll's going through right now. And I know this because I've been doing this for 30 years and I've seen day after day, week after week, hundreds of thousands of people. There was a period of time between 2000 roughly and 2008 where I had my team of people did over 18,000, it's actually 18,161 cash flow analyses on households. That data, that was when I began to, have the, come to Jesus type of meeting when it comes to money. And so you talk about an epidemic, pandemic, whatever, some kind of emic, and people don't realize this. And taking it at the organizational level, it's like, you can keep throwing money at that click-through rate campaign without checking the loading and all that other stuff. That's what your payroll is all about.
Yeah,
and then you wonder
the bucket
why
with major holes in it, and you're pouring it in as fast as it's going out.
And it's not like these people need to be. I just had a consultation over the weekend with a nice young lady, and the people, when you show them how the numbers work and show them the road to how this will work, they get so excited about it. And I think in terms of organizational efforts, one of the biggest challenges is to get adoption. What are the adoption rates of this initiative? Well, our adoption rate is sky high because you show people the truth. You don't have to sell anything. I hate to think of myself as a salesman. I think of myself more as an educator because I believe the best tool in sales is education. And when you just educate people about the realities and the truth behind certain things, especially when it comes to personal finance, they on their own, they're not getting up in the morning saying, man, in 10 years, I want to be so far gone that I can't see today from tomorrow. I want to be so stressed out about, nobody has that as a goal, but they wake up like that anyway. And so we come along, and I've been coming along saying, this is why you feel that way. Boom, 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 couple simple things. And it's just amazing how the paradigm shifting is simple. You don't have to tell people, get up and think, I won't say the famous guy's name for it, but I was listening, how you listen to these self-improvement tape. Remember back in university, on wheels where cassette tapes were popular. And it was like the one guy said, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself. It's like, why do you have to do that? It's like some people, there is a big mindset thing, and I get into that in my book, but doesn't have to be that. When you're thinking in terms of a campaign online, if the click-through rate is all you're focused on, you're not worried about page load times and things like that, you're not working that out, you're not making sure the opt-in form is always working, you can like yourself all you want, and you're going to just drive yourself nuts. And that's where we come along and point out these simple things. And people are just like, wow, I never looked at it like this before. And that's what our goal is, to give people that different perspective.
I think most people look at finances and they think it's too complex. And I know exactly why, because the financial industry that I got out of, that's what they try to do. Like I used to remember looking at things and going like, you know what, the purpose of a traditional financial advisor is just go and have a conversation with a client, confuse them so much that they just go, you go and take care of it. Like, I don't want, and it's like, that's not the right way to go and do it, right? Like that's not, we are there to go on
payment matrix math. It's so confusing. You just ignore it and don't realize what it's doing to you.
No, exactly.
And it really doesn't have to be that difficult. It's really much more simple when you show people. You take a few steps back and let's take a look. Most people, when I ask them, what do you think about money? People will say, bills, they start naming all kinds of different things. And I tell them, all that's great, but there's only one thing when it comes to money, one thing you need to think about between now and when you want to start retiring or quit working someday. That finite amount of time, you're going to bring home a finite amount of money. How much of that are you going to keep? And then I tell them that just because you can make your payments doesn't mean you can afford them. Because if you could, you would be sitting on a pile of cash right now, right? well, where's your pile of cash? And people look at me like, say, let's go back to that, and then let's look at the reasons why you feel this way, and show you why and what you can do about it. And that's basically all it's about. And like I said, working with organizations that show them at the corporate level, payroll to me, you know, I'm a business guy, and I can't imagine throwing such a huge amount of money at a place that, or an expense that is losing half of, you know, the results at first, and then of the results that it does begin to generate, half of those are gone. And it's really as simple as that.
Yeah. No, it comes down to, so what tends to happen when you're inside of an organization and, you know, you go in and you start to kind of show the blind spots, right?
Mhm.
And these things starts to get addressed, right? What is the result? What actually starts happening at the organization level, but also at the you know, I guess the employee level?
At the employee level, it's kind of like reverse engineering. You know, when the organization has to accept the fact that you've got this blind spot when it comes to your payroll, that you don't scrutinize it like you do your marketing efforts, because no one agrees that, yeah, I'd keep throwing money at a click-through effort. You know, that whole thing, it really helps people understand what's happening. And then when I enlighten them about, you know, that's what's happening with payroll, what I do is I simply provide tools and webinars. I speak either in front of a live group, or we get people in front of a webinar or a large meeting digitally. And I just simply help their employees understand that this is why this is January, which is almost over already. I can't believe it. But everybody on New Year's, they're thinking, man, I'm gonna get my finances straight. Well, if pay yourself first and budgeting really worked, how come every year is like Groundhog Day?
Groundhog Day.
You know, you wake up and there's Sonny and Cher singing on the radio, just like in the movie, and they're like, well, next year will be different. Well, it can't change unless the environment you're operating in changes. While you are stuck in the payment matrix and plugged in, you might be able to make some minor changes and improvements, but systemically, it's designed to work against you. And so you have to step out of that world and see what world exists and begin to make the changes to unplug from the payment matrix and plug into the system that is designed to help you look at, between now and when I'm done working, I'm going to make this much. Maybe I can keep 30%, 50% of that, and forget about chasing 12-digit rates or 12% rates of return in, you know, the market, which we could go on and on about that. I'm sure you probably have some pretty insightful things as well to share about that particular idea.
So, you know, you talk about financial independence. What does really financial independence means in the context of a workplace?
In a workplace, when you have a workforce that doesn't carry the weight of financial stress, doubt, whatever you want to call it, when they can come to when you pay them, and you pay them in an environment where there's clarity about where they're going personally. No one joins a team. Let's face it, you get a job, you hope you like the job, you hope you like the people, but you're there primarily because you need to make money, right? You need to pay your bills. So when you can relieve that pressure, and you have a good culture, and you're investing in other initiatives that now can have a landing spot, because the mental bandwidth of your workforce isn't spent thinking about money. And the reason why no one ever wants to talk about their finances, because they're embarrassed primarily. Or if you're one of the few people who has money, you don't want anybody to know, because you don't want anybody to come to you and say, hey, can I borrow $5,000 from you? So that's why it's such a taboo. But
Well, listen, when I was an advisor, and I would say this sometimes even to clients, I said, you know what? It's fascinating how you would tell me what's happening behind a closed door in your bedroom completely openly. Yet I ask you about your finances, and it's like, you think that I like am the devil or something. Like, you know, like, stay away from me. You know, I've had one client where I used the word budgeting for them. They literally threw me out of the house. They said, we don't use that word around here. I'm like, great. Yeah, I can see why, because I saw some of the stuff they were doing. Right. So it's
Right.
interesting when it comes to money, nobody wants to talk about it, right? But we need
Right.
to, because it's just basic financial, literacy. It's financial education
Yeah.
that 100% should be taught at schools, right?
Mhm.
Because most of us learning from our parents, and our parents learn it from their parents. And like our situation today financially, it's like night and day from even 10, 20, 30 years ago, let alone
Yeah.
from like 40 or 50 years ago, what we have to deal with now compared to what was dealt before. And they had it way simpler, but they still didn't
Mhm.
have it all figured out.
Right. Right. I mean, the environment we are in now is one where you have no doc loans. You can just click and get money to spend. And no one ever looks at the flip side of that, the consequence of that. A lot of times people will say about certain types of strategies, I'm told I can do this and I'm told I can do that. And I'm like, well, this is true, but understand every choice you make has a consequence.
Mm.
So understand the consequences before you make the choice so that the choice you make isn't one that you will live to regret. Because I think it's the Navy SEALs or the Marines who say something along the lines of there's two types of pain, the pain of discipline and the pain of regret.
Yeah.
And, the pain of regret stings a lot longer and harder than the pain of discipline. And that's what the discipline isn't like, I can't do these things. It's just a cash flow management shift of how you're managing your payroll or how think of it this way. People put payroll, organizations put it into a workforce and they have no control over it.
Hmm.
And, they don't do that in any other line item of their P&L statement. They take as much control over all of the expenses as they can. Payroll, which is one of, if not the biggest expenses of any organization, is kind of like going to Vegas, the crap table. Let's roll the dice, see what we get. And it doesn't have
Yeah.
to be that way. And when you teach people at the individual level how this works, the rest takes care of itself.
Yeah. No, you bring a great point. And again, most businesses don't think about it. Like you said, well, it's just payroll, right? It's kind of like you got to go and do that. And again, we kind of feel the same way around taxes when it comes down to if you're an individual or business owner. Like, oh, you know what? Most people think, oh, I've got a CPA, I've got an accountant, they take care of it. And it's like, well, most of them, I call the CPA, most of them are kind of like archaeologists, right? They're only reporting on what has already happened. They're
Yeah.
historians, right? Like they're
Yeah.
not planning a little bit further ahead. And I think this is kind of similar to that. Like you said, like
Yeah.
you've got this huge item on your, on your balance sheet that goes out. You need to get an understanding that, yeah, there could be a lot less of it going out if you actually go and start educating your workforce on, how to handle their,
Yeah.
finances. And
And
often what's, sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. Often
Often.
it's basic financial literacy. It's not complex strategies. I think that's what's kind of the, if I could say, sad thing about it. Like we're not talking about some advanced strategies, that you got to kind of study and understand it. A lot of it
Mhm.
is very basic stuff that really everybody should know, but they don't.
Well, the biggest challenge I've seen is three of the biggest problems is that people think that budgeting, if you got a budget together, then you're okay. At
Mm.
least you can pay your bills. But that's when I throw in, well, just because you can make your payments doesn't mean you can afford them. And then people are like, I pay myself first. Well, yeah, that worked back in 100 years ago when George Clason wrote The Richest Man in Babylon.
Yeah.
A few things have changed since then. So what do you do in today's culture? And so, while um, paying yourself first is better than doing nothing at all, what I look at again is from a payroll perspective, it's not just the employee uh, personal relief that they have coming to work. It's what is the synergistic impact on the
Mm.
company when you have two people or a team of people who aren't bringing their personal finances to work with them now because they have they have clarity they never had before. And now what does that team produce? There's an intangible amount of potential return that they fail to even begin to think about tapping into. And that's when I look at from an organizational level, doing that does works wonders for every other measurable initiative, whatever you want to call it, that would be able to be achieved while, they're instead of having people coming to work thinking, oh gosh, I only got $150 in my checking account. it's Tuesday and payday's not till next week or the end of the week or whatever. When they're not thinking like that, or if they're realizing that that's where they're at, but they know they're on a path to improve that, it makes a big difference at all levels of the organization.
Yeah, you bring a great point. When I work with advisors, after I meet with them, and like a lot of, unfortunately, in this, in financial business, there is a lot of broke financial advisors. Like I said, they're accident business owners. They're horrible at taking their own finances. Listen, I was there kind of myself, and I had to, had to go and learn through that. But often we kind of put them on, start to explain to them, like, listen, right now, you don't even have room to breathe. We got to figure
Mhm.
out how do we get you that you can actually like relax, because when people are thinking about finances, they're stressed all the time, right?
Right.
Because people say, well, I don't even have time to think. No, it's because you're not even breathing right now. We got to figure out how to
Right.
get you breathing. Then you
You need
can start to
oxygen.
think, right? And then you
Yes.
can actually have a place where you can choose something. But
Mhm.
unfortunately, people want to go and start making choices where like they're not even breathing, like they're drowning. Like
Mhm.
I don't know what the statistics are. Maybe you know them when it comes down, or like people are literally living paycheck to paycheck, right?
Yeah.
And like they're one paycheck away from bankruptcy, and that's kind of like completely crazy to think about. But that's
Right.
where people are. How can you even get to a place where, like I said, you can think, let alone to start thinking about the choices or decisions that you go and make? And I think
Mhm.
this is where what I'm hearing you say is like, I think it's the fiduciary duty of the companies to
Mhm.
understand that, to actually help their employees. And what they're, I think, need to understand that when they start taking responsibility for that, their profitability is going to go through the roof, because they're going to get a lot more out of their employees, as opposed to being more like hands off and who really cares,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well, think of it in terms of a sports team. I don't know if you follow any sports. I'm a big football fan. I'm from Chicago, so I'm a Bears fan. This year was like the first time we've had, like an actual exciting season in like almost, it was 8, 9 years. But when you have a team, the reason these guys, the top performers, get paid so much is because the team doesn't want them coming to work thinking, oh, my mortgage is behind.
No.
They want them completely focused on the task
Yeah.
at hand. Now, you can't do that at an organization with thousands of employees, but you can do that with respect to, hey, you know what, this is how much we're paying you. But when they understand that it's not about satisfying or pleasing culture, or unfortunately, we have such a, there's that old saying, keeping up with the Joneses.
No.
The Joneses are broke. The Joneses are going to work until they die. So
Yeah.
you want to keep up with them, have at
You're
it.
going to be just
But let
like
me
them.
tell you the
Yeah.
truth about the Joneses.
Yeah.
And it's about avoiding the Joneses and realizing there is a truth. There are simple truths about what you can do with your income. To most people, that yeah, everybody, not everybody, but most people think, oh, I'm gonna like to win the lottery. Well, most
Yeah.
of those people wind up broke too, because they just, like I said, now they had a shovel, now they got a backhoe, and now
Yeah.
they're just digging huge holes. But the bottom line is that this amount of clarity that people can achieve, it has a ripple effect that one day I'll figure out how to measure.
Yeah.
But until then,
Yeah.
it's just nice to enjoy watching.
Yeah. So when you think about legacy for yourself, what kind of story, financial story, actually do you want your work to kind of tell and stand for?
I just the work that I do is primarily about providing people peace of mind.
Hmm.
It's not about making people rich, although, because they're already doing that on their own. It's just mismanagement of cash flow that makes them feel broke. It's I like to say the payment matrix makes people think that that they're broke and they'll never make enough. And so to be able to give people peace of mind and clarity, just so that they can be able to enjoy life. One of the things most people do, and I've been focusing on this myself, is how many times of the day are you occupied with things that happened in the past,
Hmm.
or are you occupied with things that haven't happened yet, but you're thinking about them? And there is this present time that people avoid, not because they don't. Well, there's probably some fear in that, because they have to be thinking, oh, I can't let what happened in the past happen in the future.
Hmm.
Well, to be able to give people peace of mind so they can actually enjoy the present, that's called present for a reason,
Yeah.
and it's a gift. And most people, they simply don't unwrap that gift enough these days. And that's ultimately, as a legacy, is really what I'm hoping to be able to achieve.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. Yeah, I mean, listen, all we have is just this moment. Oh, it's already gone. No, it's this moment. No, it's gone. And most people don't think that way. Yeah, they're either living with that regret we were talking about
Mm,
before, or they have the fear, of what's going to happen in the future. And it's like, no, no, no. All you have is the moment that you have right now. And most people, are not present in the present. Right.
mhm.
Like they're
Yeah.
they're occupying space somewhere else, but they can't do anything about it.
Yeah,
Right.
and it's an amazing thing when you actually are present with the moment with,
Mm,
with my I like to try and do that with my kids, my wife, my f whomever I'm with, like right now, this moment,
yeah,
it's forget about what happened yesterday, forget about what's happening in the future. If you are able to live a life where you can enjoy the present time more than not, that to me is
yeah,
like I said, it's called present for a reason because it's a
yeah.
gift,
100. Have you
and
ever watched the movie Peaceful Warrior by any chance?
you know what? I have seen that come up a few times as a suggestion, so I'm
Yeah,
like, I
you
don't
should
know,
go and watch
that's
it.
on the
If you
radar.
if you just described what you just described, that's a perfect movie. I watch it at least once a year. I've watched it for the
Okay.
last 12 years, and there was a lot of great lessons. It's actually based on a true story of a gymnast,
Mhm.
and
Yes.
he built a whole career, speaking to people about that. And it's a great story. It's a bit of a mind gymnastics you will play as you're watching
Yeah,
it, but I think you will understand because it's all about being present. And he actually goes there. He asks him, one of the question is like, I think, yeah, I think his name is Daniel. He says, Daniel, where are you now?
yeah,
Right? Because that's the only place we occupy. But again, it's like, no, where are you? Well, no, I'm at home. No, you're not. You're in now. You're
yeah,
in the moment. Like that's all we have. We don't occupy. I mean, we occupy space, but what's more important is the time, right?
yeah.
Because yeah, where our mind is, it should be in the present moment, not somewhere else.
Yeah, I like
So,
to think in terms of finding the wow in the now, because
yeah,
everybody
yeah,
thinks the wow is in the future or they had a wow in the past, but what about right now? There's a
yeah.
wow in the
Oh,
now, you just have to
yeah.
find it, and if you're
Oh,
too
exactly.
busy, in the past p or the present, you'll never unwrap that wow that you have available right now.
Yeah, 100%. So, what's something that you've simplified in your life or business that created freedom that you kind of didn't expect, or maybe you were expecting it, but was there something that
I
you've
have
done?
to say that, as you know, in business, you have ups and downs.
Mm,
And to be able to stay steady during the ups and the downs,
mm,
because every business runs into, I didn't think that Facebook campaign was going to do
yeah,
that. I thought this was going to happen. And just realizing that, you know what? As long as I continue to do what I believe I need to do correctly, all that stuff will take care of itself. But don't
yeah,
let it, I try not to let any of that steal the now, like, the present time. And when I do find myself, getting ahead of there or falling in the past, I just, embrace it for the moment and release it so
yeah,
that now is the only thing I can do anything about. And, like I said, hopefully there'll be some wow in there somewhere. And
yeah,
and if there isn't, there's just wow and
yeah,
thinking, hey, I'm still alive. I joke with my mom who she's always like looking at things in a negative light. And I'm always talking, Ma, it could always be so much worse.
yeah,
I'm just grateful things aren't worse,
yeah,
and be grateful. And that's what I think when you find yourself being thankful and grateful on a regular basis. Paul said, godliness with contentment is great gain.
yeah,
So being able to be content regardless of circumstances is really the key because
yeah.
circumstances change,
Th-
just like the weather, just like, the time of
Well,
day.
they change, but you know what? When you really think about it, and I think this is going to make sense to you, it's not what happens; it's how we look at it. So the
Right.
circumstances, they're the same. They're neither good or bad. It's just a circumstance. It's what
Mhm.
you've made the decision, how you're going to look at it. And I know there is a lot of stuff where I'm like, God, why is this happening to me right now? Playing completely victim. And then like, couple days, weeks, months later, I'm like going, God, I am so thankful you let me go through that experience, right? Again, what
Yes.
changed? The circumstance didn't change. It was my view of how I looked at it and how I saw
Right.
that, right? So,
Yeah. The lens that we have, I wear corrective lenses. I got my contacts in now, but I try to give my mind a lens of, you know, being grateful. I have my phone goes off at 6 a.m., 9 a.m., 12 p.m., 3 p.m., 6 p.m., and 9 p.m. every
Mm.
day. Be thankful.
Ah,
And
that's a
I'm just,
great
oh,
reminder.
thanks for that reminder, because
Yeah.
it's unfortunate we have to be reminded to be thankful, because well, the world we live in, it's trying to be happy, which is a choice.
Yeah.
It's swimming upstream.
Yeah.
It
I'll
really
put it,
is.
one of my coaches says this, Daniel, life is always working for you, right? It's either
Hmm.
working for you from the perspective of, hey, things are going well, or it's working on you until it can work for you, right?
Right.
Because again, but it's always working for you. And I think, what you mentioned about parents, I'm originally from, Czechoslovakia. I lived under communism. I've got both parents that are somewhat, I would call, pessimistic when it comes down to things. And
Hmm.
I've had to work really hard on me to start looking at more of the positive side of things, just kind of like you
Oh,
mentioned, hey,
yeah.
things could be a lot worse. Nobody thinks about that. They already think that they are kind of in the worst situation. It's like, no, no, it can be way, way
Yeah.
better, or it could be way, way worse, right? But we tend to focus on the things that are not going to happen as opposed to the things that would potentially could happen. And it's something you got to work on. But again, whatever situation happens, right? It's neither good or bad. We are the ones that are kind of deciding it and we're choosing it. And I think that's the biggest thing that I learned for me is
Hmm.
that I can't remember who was, they said this, that, you know what, I would be a great fat person. Right? And I'm like, okay, how does that work? And then it was explained, like, put it that way. Right now, everything you put in your mouth, right, that you eat, you're making a choice. Like nobody's forcing me to eat the food that I would eat. I mean, there's a bit more of the story. I used to be 260 pounds. I'm about
Yeah.
180 right now, right? But it was because of a choice. And I think what you're mentioning, like everything we do is by choice,
Yeah.
and we can either be in pain right now or we can be in pain later. And it's like the pain later is a lot worse than going through
Yeah.
the shorter pain right now. But unfortunately, most people are postponing the pain.
Yeah. They
That's
kick
going to
the
be a lot more
can.
severe because they don't want to go through that pain right now, right?
Yeah. And it's funny, one of the things I teach people is to be mindful of reactions,
Yeah,
meaning, if you find out your car needs a new transmission, do you think, huh, story of my life?
yeah,
But if somebody tells me you're going to get a raise, I can't believe it.
yeah,
Most people expect the worst
sure.
and can't believe the best could
Basically.
happen. And it's like when you live like that,
Yeah,
being mindful of that tells you something. And it just, you might be, familiar with neuroplasticity,
yeah,
neuropsychology, and stuff like that. But there's something called neuroplasticity where your brain has been wired to react certain ways. And until you become aware of what those reactions are, once you do become aware, then you can start to change those reactions and the synapses fire differently.
yeah,
And so, if you think, bad news, story of my life, good news, I can't believe it, it's time to take some to do an audit of where all that comes from,
yeah,
and just realize, you can expect good things, and when bad things happen, they, like you had said before, they don't happen to you, they
yeah.
happen for you.
For you. Yeah,
What is this happening for? This is happening for my greater good. Help me learn what that is. And it's a lot easier said than done, because I'm sure you and I know I'm Italian. I'm also my mom's mom was German and Irish, so
mm,
I've got all kinds of fun temper uh, genes in me, and
yeah,
God has been very patient and kind with how He's helped me learn to deal with those.
yeah, yeah. No, that's great. Listen, as we're closing this podcast, I've got 4 questions. They're kind of,
Mhm.
I call them rapid fire questions. What's a favorite book that really shaped your view?
Well, it's probably going to sound cliche, but the Bible.
It's number
Uh,
one. It's the number one answer. So you're in good company.
Yeah.
I'm keeping
Hebrews,
track of that.
Revelation, man, those are some pretty
Yeah,
Genesis chapters 37 to 41, with the whole story of Joseph, pretty good
yeah.
stuff.
Oh, I just watched Joseph. I don't know if you've ever seen Sight and Sound Theater in
No, I
Pennsylvania. We've
haven't
got
seen
the
that.
Yeah, we've got a DVD of it. I just watched it the other day, so it's a great story. Is there a morning habit or routine that you
Oh,
swear
yeah.
by?
Yeah, I wake up early every morning, and I, do some prayer, meditation, and
Mm,
reading, and I look at that. People will say when bad things happen, like on the plane, you got to put your mask on first.
Right.
Every day I wake up, put my mask on first,
Yeah.
because this world is not going to be working with you. A lot of times it's working against you, and you got to have your mask on from the time you wake up in the morning. So that's my morning routine.
Yeah, no, 100%. Again, that is the number one answer that we're getting here. Not that I'm keeping track with, but you're in good company. What's one bucket list item that you haven't checked off yet?
Grandparenthood.
Mm.
I have my oldest. Is married a year and a half, and but once I'm looking forward to, believe it or not, changing diapers again. I
Well,
think about
there
that.
is one advantage. There is one advantage, right? It's like, oh, all right, I just fed them a whole bunch of candy. They're going crazy. Here, I'm going home. Have a nice
Yes,
night.
good night. See you
Yeah,
later. But
that's
yeah,
great.
I'm looking forward to that.
No, that's a great one. What's a surprising hobby or interest that helps you to kind of recharge?
Uh, well, I've been a fitness fanatic for pretty much all my life. I don't know if you can see behind me. There's the Rocky magazine.
Yeah.
But um, Stallone. I saw Rocky when I was 10 years old, and that made me think of just uh, being in shape. Trying to, and
Yeah.
I'm not in the shape. I'll be 60 in just a couple months, but doing my best to stay in shape. And I want to be the cool grandpa. The one who's able to roll around the floor and
Yeah, well,
that sort of thing.
you want to have the grandkids. You got to get you that. That's a good motivation, right? You're waiting for
Yep.
that, so yeah, you got to get in the shape because they're going to be a little bit faster. The older you get, they're going
Oh,
to be a
yeah.
little bit faster. So you got to do stuff to
Yeah.
keep up with it. Awesome. Now I've got one last question. I call it the hot one. Fast forward to the end of your life and imagine that everyone forgot everything that you ever taught them or that you helped them to do, but they do remember one message from you. What would you want that one lasting message to be?
That they were loved.
Hmm. That's awesome. Wow. What a powerful and perspective shifting conversation, Tony. Thank you again for sharing your journey. Where can
My
people
pleasure.
find out more about you and the work that you do?
Well, in the show notes, I provided you a link where they can get an ebook copy of my book, and also learn how to reach me if they have questions about any of the stuff that we talked about. But that link in your show notes will
Yeah.
give them everything they need to follow up.
Perfect. So if you're listening, be sure to check out Tony's website. We'll have the link in the notes. Tony, thank you again for your time, your message, and remember, making life less taxing isn't just about money; it's about freedom, clarity, and purpose. Keep building
Yes.
wealth, keep protecting your legacy, and keep living the untaxable lifestyle. We'll see you next time on the Make Life Less Taxing podcast. Thank you again, Tony.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Make Life Less Taxing podcast. Be sure to check out our other top advisor interviews at makelifelesstaxingpodcast.com.